I stood in the dusty aisles of Miller's General Store, running my fingers along shelves that hadn't changed since I was a child. The ancient cash register still sat on the counter, its brass finish dulled by decades of use. Sunlight filtered through windows that needed cleaning, casting patterns on the worn wooden floor where my father had taught me to stock shelves 30 years ago. "Sarah, you can't be serious." My brother Michael's voice cut through my nostalgia. "The property assessor valued this dump at less than $50,000. Your share of Dad's savings is worth 6 times that." I turned to face my siblings, Michael in his expensive suit, Patricia in her designer dress, both looking at me like I'd lost my mind. They'd flown in from their respective coastal cities for the reading of our father's will, already arguing over how to split his considerable liquid assets. "I've made my decision," I said quietly. "You two can split the money. I'm taking the store." Patricia threw up her hands in exasperation. "This is ridiculous. You're giving up $300,000 for a failing business in the middle of nowhere. The place barely breaks even." She wasn't wrong about the numbers. Miller's General Store had been struggling for years, hanging on mainly because our father refused to close the place where he'd raised his family. The small town of Cedar Grove had been slowly dying as younger people moved away, leaving behind an aging population that could barely keep the few remaining businesses afloat. "It's not about the money," I tried to explain. "This store was Dad's life. It meant something to him." "Dad's dead," Michael said bluntly, "and sentiment doesn't pay bills. Take the cash, Sarah. Be smart for once in your life." I felt the familiar sting of his condescension. Michael, the successful investment banker. Patricia, the high-powered attorney. And me? Just the middle child who'd stayed in Cedar Grove, helping Dad run the store while getting my business degree from the local college. "The decision's made," I said firmly. "Mr. Harrison has the paperwork ready at his office. We can sign this afternoon." Patricia shook her head, her perfect blonde hair swaying. "Fine, throw your inheritance away, but don't come crying to us when this place finally goes under." They left in a cloud of expensive perfume and disapproval, the bell over the door chiming their exit just as it had thousands of times before. I sank onto the old stool behind the counter, remembering how Dad used to sit there, greeting every customer by name. "You sure about this, Sarah?" Tom Harrison, our family's longtime lawyer, had stayed behind. He'd known me since I was a kid stealing penny candy from the jar that still sat on the counter. "Did you know about the highway proposal?" I asked instead of answering. He blinked, obviously surprised. "The interstate expansion, it's just a rumor. The state won't make a decision for months, maybe years." I pulled a folder from my bag and handed it to him. Inside were detailed maps, environmental impact studies, and most importantly, the preliminary approval for a new highway exit that would dump traffic less than a quarter-mile from Miller's General Store. "Where did you get these?" Tom asked, flipping through pages. "I didn't spend all those years just stocking shelves," I said. "While Dad ran the store, I got my business degree, did market research, made connections with the city planning office. That highway isn't a rumor, it's happening. They're announcing it next month." Understanding dawned on his face. "And when they do, property values in the area will skyrocket," I finished, "especially commercial lots with good road access. Like this one." He looked around the store with new eyes. "Does anyone else know?" "Just the planning committee and a few investors they're courting. I found out because I've been attending the town council meetings for years. Nobody pays attention to the quiet one taking notes in the back row." Tom chuckled. "You always were the smart one, no matter what your siblings think." He sobered. "But Sarah, even with the highway coming, turning this place around won't be easy. The building needs work. The inventory is outdated." "I know." I stood up, walking the aisles I knew by heart. "But I got plans, big ones." I did too. While Michael and Patricia had been building their careers in bigger cities, I'd been studying, learning, preparing. Dad might not have understood my endless questions about supply chains and profit margins, but he'd supported me anyway. He even paid for extra business classes when I expressed interest in modernizing the store's operations. "Your father knew," Tom said suddenly, "about the highway. That's why he changed his will last month." I stopped, surprised. "What?" "He left the store entirely up to your choice. Said you'd know what to do with it." Tom smiled. Guess he was right. A lump formed in my throat. Dad and I hadn't always understood each other, But he believed in me when no one else did. Now I had the chance to prove that faith wasn't misplaced. The next few weeks passed in a blur of paperwork and planning. Michael and Patricia left town immediately after the will was settled, making it clear they wanted nothing to do with my foolish decision. I didn't mind. For the first time in my life, I was completely in charge of my own destiny. I started small, cleaning and organizing, taking inventory of what worked and what needed to change. The store had good bones, solid construction, a prime location at the town's main intersection, and plenty of parking space that would become invaluable once the highway exit opened. But it needed work. A lot of work. "You're crazy," Ben Tucker told me when I hired his construction company to renovate. Ben had been my high school sweetheart before life took us in different directions. Now he ran the most respected construction firm in 3 counties. "Probably," I agreed, showing him my plans. "But look at these drawings. Modern retail space in front, warehouse capability in back. New loading dock, expanded parking. Thinking bigger than a general store?" "Much bigger." I pulled out the highway plans. "See this exit? In 2 years, this will be the main route into town. We'll have thousands of cars passing by daily. The store needs to be ready." Ben studied the drawings, his contractor's mind already working. "It's a solid plan, Sarah, but it'll cost a lot. I've got investors lined up." Another surprise for my siblings. While they've been dismissing me as the quiet one watching the store, I've been building relationships with local business leaders, people who believe in Cedar Grove's future. "Like me," Ben said quietly. Our eyes met for a moment, and I remembered why I'd once thought we'd spend our lives together. But that was a long time ago. "The work needs to be done before the highway announcement," I said, all business again. "Once that happens, every contractor in the county will be booked solid." Ben nodded. "We can start next week." "But Sarah," he hesitated, "your siblings. They're going to be angry when they realize what you've done." "They're already angry." I shrugged. "Might as well give them a real reason." The renovation began on a Monday. By Wednesday, half the town was talking about my foolishness, investing money in a dying business in a dying town. I ignored them, focusing on the future I could see so clearly. The old shelving came out first, replaced by modern retail fixtures. The creaky wooden floor was restored to its original glory. New lighting transformed the space from dim and dated to bright and welcoming. Every change hurt my dwindling savings, but I knew it would be worth it. "You're bleeding money," my accountant warned me after the first month. "The store's income can't support these improvements." "It will," I promised. "Just wait." I worked 18-hour days, running the store while supervising renovations. The old-timers who'd been shopping here for decades grumbled about the changes, but even they had to admit the place looked better. Younger families started coming in, attracted by the cleaner space and modernized inventory. Then came the first test of my resolve. "Sarah?" Mrs. Jenkins, my nearest neighbor, caught me as I was closing up one night. "I heard a rumor about developers wanting to buy up property along Main Street." My heart skipped. "Oh? Offering good money, they say. Above market value." She peered at me. "Had any offers?" "I had 3 in the past week, each higher than the last." Word was leaking about the highway, though nothing official had been announced. "Not interested in selling," I said firmly. "But surely, with all the money you're spending on renovations." I just smiled and wished her good night. Let them think I was foolish. Soon they'd understand. The next morning, I found Michael waiting in the parking lot, looking distinctly out of place in his $1,000 suit. "I hear you're turning down purchase offers," he said without preamble. "Hello to you too, brother." "Sarah, be reasonable. I've got a client willing to pay 3 times what this place is worth. Take the money and walk away." I unlocked the store's front door, breathing in the familiar scent of wood and memories. "Not interested." "Damn it, Sarah." He grabbed my arm. "I'm trying to help you. Dad's gone. You don't have to prove anything anymore." I pulled away. "You never understood him, Michael. Or me. This isn't about proving anything. It's about building something." "Building what?" "A general store in a town that's practically a ghost town." "You'll see." I left him standing in the parking lot, as confused as he'd always been by the sister who didn't fit his worldview. But Michael's visit was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, more developers came calling. Some tried to charm me, others to intimidate. Patricia even flew in from Los Angeles, armed with legal arguments about fiduciary responsibility and missed opportunities. I turned them all down. The renovations continued, eating through my savings and the small business loan I'd secured. Some days, watching the numbers in my account drop, I wondered if my siblings were right, if I was being foolish, throwing good money after bad. Then I'd look at the highway plans hidden away in my office and remember what Dad used to say. Sometimes you have to believe in something before anyone else can see it. I believed in Miller's General Store, in Cedar Grove, in myself, and soon everyone else would too. But that's another part of the story. The morning of the highway announcement arrived with a mix of fog and anticipation. I stood in Miller's newly renovated storefront, watching town council members and state officials set up for their press conference in the park across the street. Television vans lined Main Street, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like mechanical flowers. Quite a crowd, Ben observed, joining me at the window. The renovation was nearly complete. Though we kept the iconic Miller's sign, some things were worth preserving. Wait until they make the announcement, I said quietly. This is nothing compared to what's coming. My phone buzzed. Michael calling for the third time that morning. I ignored it, just as I'd ignored Patricia's increasingly threatening emails about family responsibility and fiscal insanity. They figured out something was happening in Cedar Grove, but they were still in the dark about the scale of it. The store's new automatic doors whispered open, admitting Tom Harrison. Our family lawyer looked harried, his bow tie slightly askew. Sarah, we need to talk. Your siblings have filed an injunction to prevent me from selling the property. I smiled. Let me guess. They're claiming Dad wasn't of sound mind when he changed the will. Tom blinked. How did you? Because I know my siblings. And because 3 different developers called this morning, hinting they'd help fight any legal challenges if I agreed to sell to them. This is serious, Sarah. They've hired Blackwood and Reed, top real estate attorneys. Let them waste their money. I turned from the window, surveying the transformed space. The old general store had become something entirely new. Modern retail displays, a gourmet coffee bar, and local artisan goods mixed with everyday necessities. The warehouse space in back was ready too, though no one knew what for. Yet. You're not planning to sell at all, are you? Tom asked slowly. Tom, what's the largest retailer in Cedar Grove? He frowned. Well, since the Walmart closed last year, I guess Miller's is, now that you've expanded. And how many delivery services operate in the county? None, since the pandemic killed that startup last winter. I smiled. Wrong, one starts operations today. Understanding dawned on his face. The warehouse space, the loading docks. Miller's isn't just a store anymore, I explained. It's a distribution hub. We'll serve 3 counties, delivering everything from groceries to hardware. The highway exit makes us the perfect location. But the announcement hasn't even. The sound of microphone feedback cut him off. Outside, the mayor was approaching the podium, flanked by state transportation officials. The crowd, much larger now, pressed forward eagerly. I didn't need to hear the speech. I'd been preparing for this moment for months. Instead, I watched faces in the crowd as the mayor revealed the interstate expansion plans, complete with Cedar Grove's new exit ramp, conveniently located just down the road from Miller's. The reaction was immediate. People gasped, pointed, already turning to look at nearby properties with new eyes. Property values would triple, at minimum. Commercial lots like mine would be worth even more. My phone exploded with notifications. Michael and Patricia had obviously heard the news. A text from Michael popped up. Do not sell to anyone. Call me immediately. I deleted it without reading the rest. Sarah, Ben called from the back. You've got visitors. I turned to find 3 men in expensive suits being admitted through the loading dock entrance. I recognized them immediately. Executives from National Market Chain, one of the largest retail corporations in the country. Ms. Miller, the oldest one, stepped forward, hand extended. I'm James Whitmore, Vice President of Acquisitions for NNC. We've been following your operation with great interest. Of course they had. I'd made sure word of my renovations and expansion reached the right ears. Gentlemen, I kept my voice professionally neutral. This is quite a surprise. Is it? Whitmore smiled. You've positioned yourself brilliantly. Modern facility, strategic location, distribution capabilities. Exactly what we look for in new franchise locations. And there it was, the real reason for their visit. National Market Chain had been trying to establish a presence in this part of the state for years, but property costs and local opposition had stymied them. Now, with the highway coming, we're prepared to make a very generous offer, another executive chimed in, both for the property and for ongoing franchise rights. I gestured to my office. Let's discuss it. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Their initial offer was impressive, enough to make Michael and Patricia's inheritance shares look like pocket change. But I had my own terms. Miller's keeps its name, I insisted. We maintain local control over inventory and operations. And the distribution network serves independent retailers too, not just national market chain stores. Whitmore frowned. That's unusual. Normally our franchise agreements are more standardized. This isn't a normal situation. I laid out my market research, showing population projections, traffic patterns, retail gaps in surrounding communities. You're not just buying a store location. You're buying a ready-made distribution network in an underserved region, one that's about to experience massive growth. They huddled in whispered consultation while I waited calmly. Finally, Whitmore spoke. Your terms are acceptable, with some modifications. We'll have our lawyers draw up. My lawyers will draw up the papers, I corrected. I believe you know the firm, Blackwood and Reed. Whitmore's eyebrows shot up. Your siblings' attorneys? Not anymore. As of this morning, they work for me. Amazing what you can accomplish with the right business plan and profit projections. After the executives left, Ben found me in the office, staring at the old photo of Dad behind the counter. You planned this whole thing, he said. It wasn't a question. The renovations, the distribution setup, even letting word leak to National Market Chain. I had a good teacher. I touched Dad's photograph. He always said opportunity comes to those who prepare for it. Sarah, Tom burst in, waving his phone. You won't believe. Blackwood and Reed just withdrew from your siblings' case. They're representing you now, along with handling the National Market Chain contracts. I smiled at his astonished expression. Amazing how quickly top law firms change allegiance when they realize which side has the better position. My phone buzzed again. Patricia this time, probably having just heard about her lawyers jumping ship. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. How dare you? She shrieked without preamble. You manipulative little. You knew about the highway all along. Yes. You let us think you were being sentimental, taking that worthless store while we got the cash. But you played us. No, Patricia. I let you be exactly who you are. People so convinced of your own superiority that you never bothered to look deeper. Just like you never bothered to understand Dad, or this town, or me. We're contesting everything, she seethed. The will, the store ownership, all of it. Michael's already talking to other attorneys. Tell Michael to check his email first, I suggested mildly. The one from his biggest investment client. They've signed an exclusive shipping contract with Miller's Distribution Services. Amazing how much influence you can have when you control the only distribution hub in 3 counties. Silence. Then, you wouldn't. Cancel the lawsuits, Patricia. Stop trying to interfere. Or Michael's client won't be the only one reconsidering their business relationships. I ended the call to find Ben and Tom staring at me with a mixture of admiration and shock. Remind me never to underestimate you, Ben said finally. I looked out the window at the dispersing crowd, already imagining the changes coming to Cedar Grove. The highway exit would bring new businesses, new families, new life to our fading town. And at the heart of it all would be Miller's, not just a general store anymore, but the center of a retail and distribution network that would serve the entire region. My siblings had laughed when I chose the store over cash. They dismissed me as sentimental, foolish, stuck in the past. But I'd seen the future coming and I prepared for it. Now they'd understand exactly what they'd given up, not just the property value, but the chance to be part of something bigger than their own ambitions. Sarah? Tom's voice broke into my thoughts. Your brother's on the other line, says it's urgent. I smiled, remembering all the times Michael had patronized me, treated me like the family failure. Tell him I'm busy. I've got an empire to build. But the empire would have to wait a few more hours. I had a store to run, customers to serve, a legacy to honor and transform. Dad had believed in me when no one else did. Now I would prove that his faith was justified. The automatic doors whispered open again, admitting the first curious locals eager to see what all the commotion was about. Time to show them that Miller's and Cedar Grove were just getting started. The real changes were still to come. But that's another part of the story. 6 months after the highway announcement, I stood in Miller's expanded parking lot watching the new sign being installed. The familiar Miller's remained, but underneath now read, "A national market chain partner, serving Cedar Grove since 1952. The lot was full, as it had been every day since we launched the distribution service. Local restaurants picked up supplies in the morning, delivery vans came and went throughout the day, and regular customers kept the retail floor busy. We'd had to hire 20 new employees just to keep up with demand. Looking good, Ben said, joining me outside. His construction company had become our go-to contractor, handling expansions for both the main store and our new satellite locations in neighboring towns. The highway exit opens next week, I replied, just in time for holiday shopping. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "We need to talk. In person, please." It was the please that caught my attention. My brother hadn't said please to me in 20 years. Before I could respond, a sleek black car pulled into the lot. Patricia stepped out, looking oddly uncertain in her designer suit. Behind her, Michael emerged from the driver's side. "Well," I said quietly to Ben, "this should be interesting." My siblings approached slowly, taking in the transformed property. The old general store was now the centerpiece of a modern retail complex. Loading docks hummed with activity, delivery vans came and went, and customers streamed in and out of the automatic doors. "Sarah," Michael spoke first, his usual arrogance notably absent, "you've been busy." "Very." I kept my voice neutral. "What brings you both here? More legal threats?" Patricia flinched. "We dropped all the lawsuits. You know that." "I do. I also know Michael's investment firm just lost 3 more clients to companies that ship exclusively through Miller's distribution." "That's actually why we're here," Michael said. "To talk business, real business." I raised an eyebrow but gestured toward the store. "My office is upstairs." They followed me through the retail floor, past the gourmet coffee bar where locals gathered for their morning caffeine, past the artisan goods section featuring products from small businesses across 3 counties. Everything that made Cedar Grove special, wrapped in modern retail efficiency. "You've kept a lot of the old elements," Patricia observed, touching a restored wooden beam. "Some things are worth preserving." My office occupied Dad's old storage room, though now it had windows overlooking Main Street. His original desk sat in one corner, restored and polished. The wall behind it held the store's first dollar, framed beside the multi-million-dollar contract with National Market Chain. "Nice view," Michael said, taking a seat. "You can see the highway construction from here." "That's the point." I settled behind the desk. "What do you want?" My siblings exchanged glances. Patricia spoke first. "We were wrong," she said simply. "About the store, about you, about everything." "We didn't see what Dad saw," Michael added. "The potential. The vision. And now that it's successful, you want in." My tone made it clear what I thought of their timing. "No," Patricia surprised me. "We want to apologize." Michael pulled out a folder. "And to show you something. Remember when Dad took that trip last spring, right before he got sick?" I nodded. Dad had disappeared for a week, coming back quieter than usual. "He came to see me," Michael said. "Showed me plans for expanding the store, modernizing it. Asked for investment advice." He slid the folder across the desk. I laughed at him. Told him it was a waste of time. I opened the folder. Inside were rough sketches of everything I built, the distribution network, the modernized store, even the satellite locations. Dad's handwriting covered the margins with notes and calculations. "He had the same vision you did," Patricia said softly. "He just didn't live to see it happen." "Why are you showing me this?" Michael leaned forward. "Because we finally understand. Dad didn't leave you the store out of sentiment. He left it to you because you were the only one who could make his dream real." I stared at the sketches, throat tight. All those years helping in the store, asking questions, learning the business. Dad had been preparing me. He'd seen what the store could become, just as I had. "We'd like to invest," Michael continued. "Not to take over, we've learned that lesson, but to be part of what you're building. What Dad wanted to build." "On your terms," Patricia added quickly. We'll take minority shares, no voting rights. We want to help grow Dad's legacy. I looked at my siblings, really looked at them. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen before. Respect. I'll have to think about it, I said finally. Of course, they stood to leave, but Patricia paused at the door. Sarah? That day at the will reading, when you took the store instead of cash, you weren't being sentimental at all, were you? I smiled. I was. Just not about the money. After they left, I sat looking at Dad's plans. They matched mine almost exactly. He'd seen the same opportunities, understood the same changes coming to Cedar Grove. He'd known what the store could become in the right hands. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Miller? The national market chain executives are here for the franchise review. Send them up. I tucked Dad's plans into my desk drawer. Time to show another group of doubters exactly what a small-town store could do. The next few months transformed Cedar Grove. The highway exit opened, bringing a steady stream of travelers and commuters. Other businesses sprang up along the route, but Miller's remained the heart of town. Part modern retail hub, part community center, part distribution network serving the entire region. Michael and Patricia became silent partners, their business expertise actually proving useful as we expanded. They never tried to take control, never questioned my decisions. Instead, they watched and learned as their foolish sister turned a dying general store into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. 1 year to the day after the highway opened, we held a grand celebration. The parking lot became a street fair with local vendors, live music, and hundreds of people enjoying the autumn sunshine. I stood beside the old Miller's sign, now the flagship of a growing retail chain, and remembered Dad's words. Sometimes you have to believe in something before anyone else can see it. The town council presented me with a ceremonial key to the city. The mayor made a speech about vision and progress. But the moment that meant most came later, after the crowds had gone. You did it, kid, Ben said, finding me in Dad's old office. You really did it. We did it, I corrected. The whole town did it. We just needed someone to believe it was possible. Your father would be proud. He knew. I touched the sketch in my desk drawer. He always knew. Cedar Grove wasn't dying anymore. The highway had brought new life, new opportunities, new families moving in. But it wasn't just the highway, it was the people who'd seen what was coming and prepared for it. People like Dad, who'd quietly planned for a future he wouldn't live to see. People like me, who'd chosen a rundown store over quick cash because we believed in something bigger. My siblings had laughed when I picked the store. They called me foolish, sentimental, stuck in the past. But sometimes the past is just the foundation for the future. Sometimes an old general store is really the seed of something greater. And sometimes the quiet one, the one everyone underestimates, is the one who sees it all coming. Standing in my office that evening, watching darkness fall over the busy parking lot, I smiled at Dad's old photo on the wall. We did it, I whispered. We turned your little store into something amazing. The automatic doors whispered open below, admitting late customers into the bright, welcoming space. Delivery vans pulled in to collect tomorrow's shipments. The coffee bar hosted a local book club meeting. Everything Dad had dreamed of, everything I had built, humming with life and possibility. Michael and Patricia had finally understood what they'd given up, not just the real estate value, but the chance to be part of something special. They'd learned their lesson about underestimating quiet sisters and small-town stores. But by then, I didn't need their approval anymore. I had built something bigger than their doubts, stronger than their dismissal, more valuable than any cash inheritance. I had taken Dad's dream and made it real. And in the end, that was worth more than all the highway exits in the world. The store's lights glowed in the gathering dark, a beacon for travelers and locals alike. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to grow. But tonight, I simply stood at my window and watched my little town embrace its future. They called the store worthless until the highway changed everything. But they'd been wrong about both. The highway didn't change the store's value. It just helped everyone else see what Dad and I had known all along. Sometimes the best investments aren't the ones that look good on paper. Sometimes they're the ones that look like rundown general stores in dying towns, waiting for someone to believe in them. Dad had believed. I had believed. And now finally, everyone else did too. The crystal ballroom of the Rosewood Hotel sparkled with 1,000 points of light. each crystal chandelier casting rainbow prisms across the faces of elegantly dressed guests. I stood in the shadows near the entrance, watching the scene unfold before me like some bizarre theater production. The bride, my sister Olivia, floated through the crowd in her designer wedding gown, accepting congratulations with practiced grace. Our parents, George and Margaret Wilson, followed in her wake like proud satellites, their faces glowing with the kind of joy they'd never shown for me. "Just sign here, Ms. Martinez," the wedding coordinator whispered, extending a tablet with the final payment authorization for the venue. I suppressed a smile at the false name I'd used to purchase the Rosewood Hotel chain 3 years ago. If only they knew that Elena Martinez, the mysterious hotel magnate, was actually Elena Wilson, the daughter they declared dead a decade ago. I scrawled my signature and handed back the tablet, adjusting the elegant mask that covered the upper half of my face. The masquerade theme had been Olivia's idea, though I doubted she realized how perfectly it served my purpose. Behind their own masks, not even my parents recognized the daughter they'd erased. The ceremony was beautiful, I murmured to the coordinator, my voice carrying the slight Spanish accent I cultivated for my Elena Martinez persona. "Your staff has done an excellent job." She beamed at the praise, unaware that I signed her paychecks. "Thank you, Ms. Martinez. We're so honored you came personally to oversee the Wilson wedding. They're one of Boston's most prominent families, you know." I knew all too well. The Wilsons had been Boston aristocracy for generations, their shipping empire dating back to the 1800s. That legacy of success and perfection had been everything to my parents, and the reason they found it so easy to erase their defective daughter. My crime? Refusing to marry the man they'd chosen for me, the heir to a rival shipping company. At 22, fresh out of business school with dreams of modernizing the family company, I dared to suggest that arranged marriages were outdated, that maybe the shipping industry needed innovation more than it needed mergers through matrimony. The argument that followed still echoed in my nightmares. My father's rage, my mother's cold disappointment, and finally the ultimatum: marry Jonathan Porter or be cut off completely. I chose freedom. The next morning, I emptied my trust fund, a mere $50,000 they'd forgotten to freeze, and disappeared. I spent the first month in a cheap motel, teaching myself everything I could about modern business practices, digital transformation, and venture capital. I changed my appearance, adopted a new accent, and built Elena Martinez from scratch. What I didn't know then was that my parents had chosen to deal with my departure in the most dramatic way possible. Instead of admitting their daughter had defied them, they told everyone I died in a sailing accident off the coast. They even held a funeral, complete with an empty casket and tearful eulogies about their beloved Elena, taken too soon. I learned about my own death 6 months later when I tried to contact my younger sister. The email I sent bounced back, but not before I saw her social media profile picture, Olivia in black, standing beside our parents at my memorial service. That was the moment Elena Wilson truly died and Elena Martinez was born. "Ms. Martinez?" The coordinator's voice pulled me back to the present. "Would you like to be seated for dinner?" I nodded, following her to a table near the back of the ballroom. Close enough to observe everything, far enough to maintain my cover. The irony of paying for my sister's wedding venue and owning the mansion our parents still lived in wasn't lost on me. Over the past decade, I'd systematically purchased every property the Wilsons used, every hotel they frequented, and a controlling interest in most of their business partners. They just didn't know it yet. My father's voice suddenly carried across the room, loud enough to reach my table. "Everyone, if I could have your attention, please." The crowd quieted as George Wilson raised his champagne glass. He cut an impressive figure in his tuxedo, silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers. 10 years had added distinguished lines to his face, but hadn't diminished his commanding presence. "Today is a day of joy, celebrating the marriage of my only daughter, Olivia, to the love of her life." Only daughter. The words hit like a physical blow, even after all these years. "But it's also a day tinged with bittersweetness," he continued, his voice thick with practiced emotion. "I can't help but think of our beloved Elena, Olivia's sister, who left us far too soon. She would have loved to see this day." Beside him, my mother dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, the perfect breathing mother still mourning her lost child. If only they knew that lost child was sitting 30 feet away, controlling more wealth and power than the Wilson family had accumulated in 6 generations. A server appeared at my elbow. "More champagne, Ms. Martinez?" I accepted the glass, using the moment to collect myself. I hadn't come here for revenge, or at least, that's what I told myself. I'd built my empire through genuine innovation, transforming struggling businesses into modern powerhouses. The fact that I now controlled most of my family's business interests was just convenient. Such a shame about their older daughter. The elderly woman seated beside me whispered, clearly hoping to share gossip with the mysterious hotel owner. "The poor girl died in a sailing accident. They say she was quite troubled before the end, defying her parents, refusing a brilliant marriage match. Some even whispered she might have, you know." She made a vague gesture. "Done it on purpose." My fingers tightened around the champagne flute. Of course they'd implied my death was suicide. It fit their narrative of the rebellious daughter who couldn't handle the pressure of their expectations. Better than admitting the truth, that I'd chosen freedom over their suffocating control. The sound of clinking glass drew everyone's attention. Olivia had stood to make her own speech, her new husband beaming beside her. My little sister had grown into a stunning woman, though her beauty had a brittle quality that reminded me of our mother. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice carrying the same finishing school polish I'd once been forced to learn. "As Father said, this day is perfect in almost every way. The only thing missing is my dear sister Elena." I took a slow sip of champagne, watching her performance. Elena was more than my big sister. She was my best friend, my protector, my role model. Olivia's voice wavered perfectly. "When we were little, she used to tell me that anything was possible if you were brave enough to chase your dreams. I just wish," she paused for dramatic effect, "I just wish she could see that I finally found my dream." The crowd murmured sympathetically. I fought the urge to laugh. Olivia had been 12 when I left, old enough to understand exactly what our parents had done. She'd chosen their side, happily stepping into the role of perfect only daughter. The sister who'd supposedly been her best friend hadn't even raided a phone call to warn me about my impending death. As dinner was served, I found myself studying the head table. My parents sat there with Olivia and her new husband, along with his equally wealthy family. They looked like something out of a society magazine. Perfectly groomed, perfectly poised, perfectly false. 10 years ago, their perfect facade had crushed me. Now I saw them clearly, small people desperately clinging to outdated power, unaware that the world had changed around them. The shipping industry they dominated for generations was transforming, and they hadn't adapted. Their empire was crumbling, propped up only by the secret investments I'd made through shell companies. "Ms. Martinez?" A man in an expensive suit approached my table. I recognized him as James Porter, my almost father-in-law, though he aged considerably. "I hope you're enjoying the evening. I must say, we were surprised and honored when we heard you'd be attending personally." I smiled behind my mask. "I make it a point to oversee special events at my flagship properties, Mr. Porter, especially for such distinguished families." He preened at the compliment. "Yes, well, the Wilsons and Porters have been pillars of Boston society for generations. Though I must admit, recent years have been challenging." "Oh." I kept my tone merely polite, though I knew exactly how challenging things had been for both families. My companies had slowly acquired controlling interests in their major shipping routes, modernizing operations and squeezing their profit margins. "The industry isn't what it used to be," he said, sighing heavily. "These tech startups, these modern logistics companies, they're disrupting everything. Why, just last month we lost our biggest client to some upstart called Phoenix Maritime." I managed not to smile. Phoenix Maritime was one of my first acquisitions, transformed from a failing local shipper into a digital logistics powerhouse. "Progress can be difficult to navigate," I offered diplomatically. "Progress," he scoffed. "In my day, business was built on relationships, on family connections. Did you know my son was supposed to marry George Wilson's older daughter? Now that would have been a merger worth celebrating. But the girl had other ideas." He shook his head. "Tragic. What happened to her? Though perhaps for the best, given her rebellious nature." The crystal flute in my hand threatened to shatter under my grip. Before I could respond, a commotion at the head table drew everyone's attention. My mother had stood up suddenly, swaying slightly, Apparently the champagne had flowed too freely. I simply must say, she announced, her voice carrying that peculiar precision of the elegantly drunk. How wonderful it is to see all our dear friends here, especially those who supported us after we lost our Elena. I sat perfectly still, watching the train wreck unfold. Such a difficult time, she continued, dabbing at her eyes. Having to tell everyone that our daughter, that she, well, the shame of it all. But we preserved the family name, didn't we, George? We gave her a proper send-off, even if she didn't deserve. Margaret. My father's voice cut through her rambling like a steel blade. Perhaps you should sit down. But the champagne had loosened something in my mother's perfect facade. Oh, but darling, I simply must tell Ms. Martinez what an honor it is to have her here. Such a successful woman, and self-made at that. Nothing at all like our poor Elena, who thought she could reject her family obligations and succeed on her own. She laughed, the sound brittle as breaking glass. As if a Wilson could ever survive without family connections. Why ever she didn't even make it a month before. That's enough. My father stood, his face flushed with anger. Margaret, you're making a scene. The ballroom had gone silent, hundreds of guests watching my mother's meltdown with horrified fascination. Olivia was hiding her face in her hands, her new husband patting her shoulder awkwardly. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the marble floor. The sound drew my mother's attention, and she focused on me with the unsettling intensity of the truly drunk. Ms. Martinez, she called out, you simply must tell us your secret. How does a woman with no family name, no connections, build such an empire? My Elena thought she could do the same, you know. Thought she was smarter than generations of Wilson business sense. And now she's what, mother? The words left my mouth before I could stop them, my careful accent slipping. My mother froze, something flickering across her face. Recognition, impossible as it was. But the moment passed. She blinked at me owlishly, confused by the question from a stranger. My father had reached her by then, taking her arm firmly. I apologize for my wife, he said smoothly. The excitement of the day combined with the memories. Please, everyone, enjoy your dinner. He led my mother away, probably to sleep off the champagne in one of the hotel's luxury suites. Suites I owned, in a hotel I owned, just like I owned the mansion they still lived in and controlling interest in the companies they thought were still theirs. I sank back into my chair, hands trembling slightly. I'd come too close to revealing myself, letting old pain override a decade of careful planning. The elderly woman beside me patted my arm sympathetically. Don't mind them, dear, she said. Old money families like the Wilsons, they can't handle change. Today's world belongs to people like you, self-made, forward-thinking. Why, I heard your hotel chain is expanding into shipping and logistics now. Among other things, I murmured, recovering my accent. She had no idea that my hotel chain was just the tip of the iceberg. Through various shell corporations and holding companies, Elena Martinez controlled an empire worth billions, built specifically to systematically dismantle everything the Wilsons had ever valued. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of small talk and subtle observation. I watched my sister dance with her new husband, my father smooth things over with embarrassed guests, my mother nowhere to be seen. They looked exactly like what they were, relics of a dying era, clinging to appearances while their real power slipped away. When I finally stood to leave, the wedding coordinator rushed over. Ms. Martinez, will you be staying the night? We've prepared the presidential suite. No, I said quietly, watching my father lead a round of toasts. I think I've seen enough family drama for one evening. She laughed nervously, clearly uncertain how to respond to her boss's dry tone. I handed her a thick envelope, a wedding gift for my sister, though she'd never know who it was really from. Make sure the bride and groom have everything they need, I instructed, and send some water and a spear into Mrs. Wilson's room. She'll need it tomorrow. As I walked out of the crystal ballroom, I heard my father's voice one last time, to family, the most precious thing we have. I didn't turn around. Elena Wilson was dead, after all, they'd made sure of that themselves. But Elena Martinez was very much alive, and she was just getting started. In my car, I pulled out my phone and dialed my assistant. Maya, execute phase 2. It's time the Wilsons learned exactly who they're dealing with. The next few weeks would change everything. But that's another part of the story. The morning after Olivia's wedding, I sat in my penthouse office overlooking Boston Harbor. watching the Wilson shipping vessels crawl across the water like tiny, obsolete insects. My mother's drunken outburst had accelerated my timeline, but perhaps that was for the best. 10 years of silent accumulation had positioned all the pieces perfectly. Now it was time to play the game. The numbers are in from last night, Maya announced, entering with her tablet. My assistant of 8 years was the only person who knew both Elena Martinez and Elena Wilson. The Wilson Porter wedding cost them just over $300,000. They put it all on credit. I nodded, unsurprised. And their current financial position? Critical. Maya pulled up detailed spreadsheets. Wilson Shipping's quarterly losses have hit $12 million. They've mortgaged everything they own, which technically means they've mortgaged everything you own since you hold all their properties through shell companies. They're 3 months behind on payments to Phoenix Maritime, which means they're 3 months behind on payments to me. I finished. What about the Porter merger they're counting on? James Porter's company isn't in much better shape. The merger would be like tying 2 stones together and expecting them to float. I smiled, remembering James Porter's condescending comments at the wedding. The man who'd once thought himself worthy of arranging my marriage was now drowning in debt, his company hemorrhaging clients to my more efficient operations. Send notices to all their major clients, I instructed. It's time for Phoenix Maritime to raise its rates. Let's see how many stay loyal to outdated shipping methods when modern logistics could save them millions. Maya made a note, then hesitated. There's something else. Your father has called an emergency board meeting for Wilson Shipping tomorrow morning. Finally, I've been waiting for this moment, carefully orchestrating it through a decade of strategic moves. Prepare the paperwork. It's time for Elena Martinez to make her first public appearance at Wilson Shipping. Are you sure? Maya's concern was evident. Once you start this. They buried their daughter to save face, I said quietly. Now they'll learn exactly what that decision cost them. The next morning, I dressed with particular care, a blood-red Armani suit that projected power, Louboutin heels that clicked like weapons on marble floors, and a small gold compass pendant that had once belonged to my grandmother. The only Wilson who had truly loved me. The Wilson Shipping headquarters hadn't changed in 10 years. The same imposing granite building, the same brass nameplate declaring founded 1847. The same portrait of my great-grandfather glowering in the lobby. But there was an undercurrent of tension today, nervous whispers and darting glances as employees noticed my arrival. Ms. Martinez. The receptionist jumped to attention. We weren't expecting. That is, the board meeting is private. Not anymore. I handed her a thick envelope. My credentials. As the majority shareholder of Phoenix Maritime and holder of significant Wilson Shipping debt, I have every right to attend. Her hands shook as she verified the paperwork. I watched her face pale as she realized exactly how much power Elena Martinez wielded. Of course. 14th floor boardroom. The elevator ride gave me a moment to center myself. In my ear, Maya's voice provided updates through a discreet earpiece. All board members present. Your father's trying to push through an emergency restructuring plan. He still thinks he can save the company without outside help. The boardroom doors were heavy oak, stretching from floor to ceiling. I paused for a moment, hearing familiar voices through the wood. Can't accept these terms, my father was saying. Phoenix Maritime is trying to steal our company piece by piece. We don't have a choice, George, another voice responded. We're bleeding clients, our ships are outdated, and this mysterious Elena Martinez owns half the ports we use. I pushed the doors open. The conversation died instantly. 12 men in expensive suits stared at me. Old money, old power, old ideas. At the head of the table, my father stood frozen mid-gesture, his face darkening as he recognized the woman who'd attended his daughter's wedding. Ms. Martinez, he managed finally. This is a private meeting. Not anymore. I strode to the table, my heels echoing in the silence. Please don't let me interrupt your discussion of my company's terms. Your company? He spat the words. Phoenix Maritime is nothing but an upstart using digital gimmicks to steal established clients. Wilson Shipping has survived for 6 generations, and will survive for precisely 12 more days. I cut in smoothly. Unless you accept the merger terms I'm about to offer. I placed a folder on the table. Inside was the culmination of 10 years' work. Documents proving my ownership of their buildings, their warehouses, their homes. Evidence of their mounting debts, their failed modernization attempts, their desperate efforts to maintain appearances while their empire crumbled. "This is impossible," my father whispered, flipping through pages. "These properties, our house, the hotel chain, all belong to me," I confirmed, "along with controlling interest in most of your remaining clients' companies. Face it, Mr. Wilson, you're not just losing, you've already lost." He slammed the folder down. "Who are you? Some tech billionaire trying to dismantle a legacy business. You have no idea what family tradition means." I felt my carefully constructed mask crack, just a little. Family tradition. I took off my designer sunglasses, meeting his eyes directly. Like the tradition of forcing your children into loveless marriages, or the tradition of declaring them dead when they refuse to comply. The color drained from his face. "No," he whispered. "It's not possible." Elena, one of the older board members, breathed, recognition dawning. "My God, Elena Wilson." I smiled, not pleasantly. "Elena Martinez, actually. I took the name after you killed me. Makes for a better corporate image than being the dead daughter of a failing shipping magnate." Chaos erupted in the boardroom. Board members shouted questions. My father stumbled back into his chair, and somewhere in the building, an emergency alarm began to wail. "Enough." My voice cut through the noise like a whip. "You have exactly 24 hours to accept the merger proposal. If you refuse, I call in all outstanding debts and sell your remaining assets to my subsidiaries. Your choice." I turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and father, you might want to check on mother. I hear she's still recovering from quite a spectacle at Olivia's wedding." Security guards burst in as I walked out, responding to some panic button my father had probably pressed. I smiled at them as I passed. They worked for me too, though they didn't know it yet. In the elevator, Maya's voice came through my earpiece. "Well, that was dramatic." "They always love theatrics," I replied. "I learned from the best. Your mother's waiting in the lobby." I stiffened. "What?" "She arrived about 5 minutes ago. Looks like she's mostly recovered from the champagne." The elevator doors opened, and there she was. Margaret Wilson, Boston society matron. Perfectly coiffed even in the middle of her world collapsing. She stood near the great-grandfather's portrait, and for a moment I saw myself at 18, standing in that same spot while she lectured me about family duty. "Ms. Martinez," she said as I approached, her voice brittle as frozen glass. Or should I say, "Elena will do." I cut her off. "But only in private. Publicly, I'm still very much dead. Your choice, as I recall." She flinched. "We did what we had to do. For the family name." "The family name?" I laughed, the sound echoing off marble walls. "Take a look around, mother. The Wilson name isn't worth the brass it's engraved on. The only thing keeping this company afloat is my money, which makes it my name on the line. You're enjoying this," she accused, "destroying everything we built." "No." I stepped closer, close enough to smell her familiar perfume. "I'm saving everything you destroyed. The company will survive, modernize, grow. The Wilson name will continue, just not in Wilson hands." Her perfectly painted lips trembled. We really thought you were dead, poverty-stricken, failed," I supplied. "You thought your rebellious daughter couldn't possibly succeed without the family's help. That's why you erased me, because the alternative was admitting you might be wrong." A tear slipped down her cheek, carving a path through expensive foundation. "Elena, please. We can fix this. Come home." "I'm not that naive girl anymore." I walked past her toward the entrance. "You have 24 hours to accept the merger. Don't worry, I'll let you keep the house. Consider it a wedding gift to Olivia." Outside, my driver held the car door. Boston's summer sun felt warm on my face, so different from the artificial chill of the Wilson building. I looked back once, seeing my mother's silhouette through the glass doors, small and lost in the lobby of her crumbling empire. Maya was waiting in the car. "Phase 2 complete," she reported. "The board is in chaos, our lawyers are standing by, and rumors already spreading through the financial district. What's our next move?" I checked my phone, seeing dozens of missed calls from my father, from board members, from family friends suddenly realizing who Elena Martinez really was. Let them talk. Let them panic. The next 24 hours would determine the fate of everything they'd built, and everything I'd built to replace it. Now, I said, we wait, and then we show them exactly what the dead daughter can do. The next phase would change everything. But that's another part of the story. The 24 hours I'd given the Wilson Shipping Board felt like the longest of my life. I spent them in my penthouse office, watching the sun set and rise again over Boston Harbor while my phone lit up with increasingly desperate messages. From my father, "We need to talk. This isn't the way." From various board members, "Let's discuss terms privately." From family friends, "Elena, darling, we never believed." From Olivia, surprisingly, "Is it really you?" I answered none of them. Instead, I focused on the final pieces of my plan, making sure every detail was perfect. The media had already caught wind of the story. Boston's supposedly dead heiress returning as a billionaire CEO to take over her family's company. The headlines wrote themselves. The Wall Street Journal is on line 1, Maya announced, entering with fresh coffee. They want an exclusive. Not yet. I took the coffee, breathing in its familiar comfort. Let them speculate for now. The real story comes after the board's decision. And if they refuse the merger? I smiled, remembering my mother's face in the lobby. They won't. Right on cue, my phone buzzed with a message from the board's secretary. The vote was in. Unanimous acceptance of Phoenix Maritime's merger terms. My father hadn't even voted against it. Perhaps he finally recognized the inevitable. Set up the press conference, I told Maya. 2 hours, main lobby of Wilson Shipping. Tell them Elena Martinez will be making a major announcement. And Elena Wilson. I touched the compass pendant at my neck, thinking of my grandmother. She's done hiding. The lobby was packed by the time I arrived. Reporters jostled for position, cameras flashed, and a crowd of Wilson Shipping employees lined the balconies above. My father stood with the board members on a small stage, looking like he aged a decade overnight. I made them wait 10 minutes, a small petty pleasure, but I'd earned it. When I finally walked in, the crowd fell silent. I wore Wilson blue today, a power suit that matched the company's logo, with my grandmother's compass catching the light. No more hiding behind sunglasses or Spanish accents. "Thank you all for coming," I began, stepping to the podium. "My name is Elena Martinez, or, as some of you might remember, Elena Wilson." The room erupted. Cameras clicked frantically, reporters shouted questions, and somewhere in the crowd, I heard my mother gasp. I held up a hand for silence. 10 years ago, the Wilson family announced my tragic death, a sailing accident off the coast. The truth is somewhat less dramatic. I simply refused an arranged marriage and left to build my own life. My parents, finding this embarrassing, chose to bury an empty casket rather than admit their daughter had defied them. My father stepped forward, face dark with anger, but security, my security, held him back. In the decades since, I continued. I built what they said was impossible. Phoenix Maritime revolutionized shipping logistics, embracing modern technology while companies like Wilson Shipping clung to outdated methods. We grew rapidly, acquiring ports, properties, and clients, including many former Wilson assets. I turned to face the board members directly. Today, I'm announcing the merger of Wilson Shipping with Phoenix Maritime. The Wilson name will continue, but the company will be completely restructured. All current board members will be retiring with generous compensation packages. More chaos, more shouted questions. I noticed Olivia slip into the back of the room, still in her honeymoon tan, watching with wide eyes. "And now," I said, "I'll take questions. Ms. Wilson, did your family know you were alive?" "No. They were quite committed to my death." "Ms. Martinez, how did you build your empire?" "The same way I would have modernized Wilson Shipping, had I been allowed, by understanding that tradition without innovation is just slow decay." "Mr. Wilson, your response to your daughter's return?" My father stepped forward, and for a moment I saw something crack in his proud facade. "Elena, we thought. You thought I'd fail," I finished for him. "That's the problem, father. You never saw who I really was." He aged another decade before my eyes. "We did what we thought was right." "No," I corrected quietly. "You did what was easy. Erasing you was easier than admitting I might have had better ideas. Declaring me dead was easier than explaining why I left. Even now, giving up control is easier than watching your company collapse under its own weight." "Elena," my mother's voice, somewhere in the crowd. "Please." I ignored her, addressing the reporters again. "The merged company will retain the Wilson name out of respect for its history. But make no mistake, this is a complete transformation. We're moving into the future, whether the old guard likes it or not. More questions flew, but my attention was caught by Olivia pushing through the crowd. She looked different from the polished bride of 2 days ago, younger somehow, more like the sister I remembered. You were there, she said, reaching the stage. At my wedding. You watched us all. Pretend to mourn me. I raised an eyebrow. Yes. I knew. Her voice dropped so only I could hear. Sometimes I'd look at old pictures and think I saw you in the background. At charity events, business functions, I thought I was going crazy. You aren't. Why didn't you tell me? Back then, when they first. Would you have kept my secret? I studied her face, seeing the answer. No, you were always their perfect daughter. The one who'd never disobey. She flinched. I was 12. Old enough to know right from wrong. I softened slightly, seeing real pain in her eyes. But young enough to be afraid of ending up like me. A tear slipped down her cheek. I missed you. The real you, not the sanitized dead sister they talked about at parties. For the first time, I felt my own composure crack. I missed you too, but I couldn't be who they wanted. I had to be myself. Ms. Martinez. A reporter's shout broke the moment. What happens to the Wilson family now? I turned back to the crowd, professional mask firmly in place. They'll retain their personal assets, those that aren't already legally mine, and receive fair compensation for their shares. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to save a company that lost its way. And the family relationships. I looked at my father, defeated on his own stage, my mother crying quietly in the crowd. Olivia, torn between the sister she'd lost and the parents she'd chosen. Some things, I said quietly, can't be fixed with money or business deals. The Wilsons declared their daughter dead rather than accept her choices. That doesn't go away just because she came back successful. The press conference wound down after that. Reporters got their sound bites, photographers got their shots of the prodigal daughter triumphant, and gradually the crowd dispersed. I stayed on stage, watching my parents huddle with their lawyers while Olivia hovered uncertainly between us. Maya appeared at my elbow. The papers are ready to sign. Private conference room. I nodded. Give me a minute. When the lobby was almost empty, I walked to where my parents stood. Up close, they looked old and tired, nothing like the towering figures of my childhood. The lawyers will explain everything, I said professionally. You'll be comfortable. The house is yours for life, the vacation properties too. I'm not interested in leaving you destitute. Just powerless, my father said bitterly. Like you left me? I smiled without warmth. The difference is, I'm giving you a choice. Sign the papers, accept a comfortable retirement, maybe even try to rebuild something resembling a real family relationship. Or fight me, lose everything, and prove that pride really is more important than blood. My mother reached for my hand. I let her take it, feeling her expensive rings press into my palm. We thought we were protecting you, she whispered. The business world, it's so hard for women. I pulled away. I know exactly how hard it is. I succeeded not because of the Wilson name, but because you forced me to fight without it. Olivia stepped forward. Elena, what about me? You're my sister, I said simply. My door is open when you're ready to know me as I am, not who they wanted me to be. I turned to go, then paused. Oh, and mother. The next time you're drunk at a party in my hotel, try not to brag about how you erased your daughter. It's bad for both our reputations. The paperwork took less than an hour. Signatures were scratched, hands were shaken, and just like that, Wilson Shipping belonged to the daughter they'd buried. The company would keep its name but nothing else. New board, new methods, new future. Later that night, I stood in my office watching the Wilson ships in the harbor. Soon they'd be repainted with the Phoenix Maritime logo, upgraded with modern technology, integrated into my larger transportation network. The Wilson legacy would live on, just not in the way my parents had imagined. Maya brought a bottle of champagne. To the merger. To the truth, I corrected, taking a glass. Sometimes it takes a death to bring it to life. Your sister's been calling, she said carefully, and your grandmother's compass. I touched the pendant. Grandma knew. She left me this compass the day before I disappeared, said sometimes the right path isn't the easy one. Smart woman. She would have loved seeing this. I sipped the champagne, remembering. She always said the Wilson pride would sink us faster than any storm. My phone buzzed. Olivia again. This time I answered. Can we talk? She asked quietly, Really talked, just us? I looked out at the harbor where the Wilson ships floated in darkness. Come over. It's time you saw who your sister really is. After I hung up, I asked Maya to order dinner for two. It would be a long night of explanations, of bridging the gap between the sister who died and the woman who rose from those ashes. But maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all this. I wasn't Alana Wilson anymore. That girl had died exactly as her parents claimed. But Elena Martinez was stronger, successful beyond their wildest fears, and finally, absolutely free. The merger would save their company. The money would save their lifestyle. But the truth, that would save me. And in the end, that's what the story was really about. Not revenge, not money, not even family. It was about a girl who had to die to become who she was always meant to be. I raised my glass to the dark harbor. To Alana Wilson, I whispered, "May she rest in peace." Then I turned away from the window and went to meet my sister, ready to begin whatever came next.